Look how wide the piston should be, and then look how narrow it goes to like a little pencil. And as soon as we put any pressure on it, just moved it, it just simply snapped. We're introducing you to a new Reedish Motorsport project car, and you can probably guess in the first second what we're going to be doing with this. M3 Touring conversion incoming. So it's all started a while back when I bought an M3 Coupe 2005, manual transmission, 75,000 miles. On paper it looked excellent. I knew it was a little bit rusty, but got it up on the lift and wow, were we surprised. Horrible corrosion on the rear arches, under the seal panels, holes in the seal behind the metal covers, holes in the floor. It was bad. There's some links to the video that we shot of that car and coming up now, and we just couldn't sell it on. It was just too bad. I couldn't do that to anybody. Even if I told them how much rust was on it, it was just not worth selling. So we need to repurpose that car. You'll see more about that in the next video clip, I'm sure. But then we had to find a donor, so we picked up this, a 318i Auto LPG conversion. Now I don't often buy things as weird and original as this, but it just, something stuck out, and it was the colour. Light yellow it's called. It's more of a gold sort of finish. It's an original 2000 model. It's only got a couple of owners on it. One old chap, I think, had owned it for, I think, the last 14 years and clearly looked after it. Apart from the LPG conversion, it is completely original, and that's the bit I love about it. The panels are straight. Yes, it's had a little bit of paint, but look at it. It's just like it's just left the dealership a few years ago. All original, pre-facelift, yellow lights. I like it. There's something about it. It's original. It's got grey cloth inside. We'll go inside and have a look a little bit later. I don't know why I'm laughing, but well, you'll see shortly, because the poor chap, I think, was giving up driving and basically giving away all of his transport mode, because in the back, what did it come with? A free mobility scooter. So brilliant. We can repurpose that somehow as well, I reckon, in the future. See if we can do some Colin Firth style trickery with that. But we've got an interesting cloth grey finish with wood trim and lots of services. 21 stamps. This is the originality I like about it. 21 stamps in this service book. Every year I think it had been for service. It's fantastic. So nobody, well, we're never going to use that 318 engine, but it's coming straight out, going in the bin like the interior. Nothing really we're going to save. We are keeping the chassis and the chassis alone. And this is an intro to show what we're going to be doing. Coming up, more clips about the E46 M3 donor car next. So that was a bit different. We thought we'd start our intro out in the car park this time, being one of our own vehicles, a company project. We can record a lot more detail of it without having to censor certain areas for data protection and things like that. So yes, we are building an M3 Touring. You might have worked it out if you're already on Instagram following us. And if you're not on Instagram following us, why aren't you? Go over to Instagram now, press the follow button and see behind the scenes info. There's much more content that we upload there daily compared to here on YouTube. But yes, M3 Touring, it's good timing really. There's going to be a new M3 Touring released later this year, the G81. It's the first official M3 Touring from BMW, and it might go into 2023, but we thought this is the year to do it, 2022. So we picked up this donor. It's a 318i automatic transmission with LPG. Somebody obviously thought the 318 wasn't economical enough, so they put LPG on it. So we've got disassembled all that system as well, and it's in light yellow. That's about as descriptive as it is. Officially, BMW call this light yellow. We wanted one as basic and as original as possible, because then it's less likely to be messed about with. And even though all of this stuff is going, all the mechanical stuff, it really doesn't matter what the base model is to us. We don't care. It's going to have M3 running gear, M3 body, and there's going to be some real originality features on this. But we won't spoil the surprises now. We're going to film a full sort of video series documenting the process and how we get along with it. So first of all, we're going to have to be stripping everything out, because we're going to go into the deepest part of the vehicle and probably one of the most biggest jobs that doesn't get often talked about, the boot floor. Now some conversions do get the boot floor, some conversions don't. We're not sure of the exact reason. Some cars stay sleeperish without the M3 arches. Now we're going full arches, rear, front, bonnet, and especially the boot floor. I don't think there's been a great amount of documentation over the years by other conversions showing the boot floor, so we'll try our best to detail what's going into it. We're going to be using a genuine BMW M3 boot floor panel, the brand new one as well, and at the same time going to be dealing with some of the localized corrosions underneath, and also the RACP, known for its weakness on the E46. And seeing as we're putting M3 power through it, we're going to naturally have to put the reinforcement plates on underneath, which are going to be the Riedish V3s. And nowadays, it's not just underside plates. So the Riedish V3 kit comes with the new plate system, which drops down through the boot floor and connects to the back of the RACP internally and welds it to the chassis legs, both sides. So that's a basic form of load relief, which really helps hold the RACP and doesn't have to rely on single spot welds all the way around. So we're going to have to not just cut this out, but we're going to be drilling spot welds out. We're going to do it in a nice panel by panel replacement way. So drilling all the spot welds out around the perimeter of the boot floor. There's the join line there. That's the RACP. That's the boot floor. And on the M3, if you don't know about it, the M3 doesn't have a full depth boot floor because it doesn't carry a spare wheel. It just has a little bit of a hump here, and then it tails off and goes up to nothing. There's a little polystyrene kit in the boot, which is your tire kit, breakdown kit. And that's because obviously the M3 exhaust is so wide. Normally 46s just had a left-hand side exhaust there. The M3 has a huge one, 28 kilos, goes all the way across, 2 mounts on the left, 1 mount on the right. Actually, let's see if the mounts are up there. No, the mounts aren't up there as well. Hadn't even noticed that. So we're gonna have to weld the BMW mount panel up here to hold the rear exhaust assembly. And there's obviously a different diffuser on the rear of the bumper as well. So let's get cracking and get the axle stripped out. So Dave stripped the underside of the 3 Series Touring now, so we get a better look at things underneath. We got the traditional dirt and corrosion in many areas, but look how nice and original it is under here where the fuel tank was covering all this area. They don't put any seam sealer here, so it's just E-coat, quite an original E-coat colour, lots more yellow in this early build. So it was a January 2000 model. Nice up there, a little bit of corrosion on the seat panel edges where the grommets have probably gone through, and on the front edge where the fuel tank brackets are, but ourselves, Riedish Motorsport, have got new ones of those, so we'll be putting the replacements of those ones on as well. And if you've never seen an early build, you'll be surprised to see the fuel tank strap brackets in this shape. Normally they're double width, they go all the way over to here, but the early ones had just a single M8 nut inside, and it was just simply to hold the fuel tank strap, which goes over to that bracket. And then later on, probably somewhere around 2000, 2001, they added them double width and put them on every model. And that was because the non-M3 convertibles had a big substantial V-brace system that came out of a sort of mold in here on the boot floor and V'd off both sides to connect up to the V-brace mounting box area, which would be there, but it also picked up halfway through the length of the rod on the fuel tank bracket. That's why the fuel tank brackets have got 2 M8 nuts, and the V-brace mounting point picked up on this one. But on these early builds, I suppose they hadn't thought about that at this point, and they don't have it. So it looks odd to see, because if you've worked with any 46 M3 like we've done for the last 10, 11 years on the underside, so you'll always be used to seeing double width ones, and this one is an early one with singles. So we'll be changing these brackets, putting the new Riedish Motorsport brackets on as well, and the brake pipe ones. Look at the corrosion on there, we don't want them on there, they'll be corroded behind the flanges as well, hidden corrosion. Somebody had done copper brake pipes, we had to cut those off because, as normal, they hadn't been waxed, so the unions were corroded. That was just causing the copper to twist, so that had to be snipped to remove. Lots of brackets that will need to be removing as well. Well, that's coming off on the boot floor, because this big bulky boot floor is coming out. Drilling out all the spot welds in an original fashion to try and get all this removed nicely to then use the new BMW one. And it's got an LPG conversion. Somebody's crudely bolted the LPG tank straight through the boot floor, so we need to undo that, get a specialist in to disconnect and safely check the LPG system. Nice hole where they've gone through the floor, but amazingly it's not corroded. Interestingly, both shock absorbers snapped. Lots of corrosion up there on the actual brackets itself. But come and have a look at this side. That one simply snapped off. Look how wide the piston should be, and then look how narrow it goes to like a little pencil. And as soon as we put any pressure on it, just moved it, it just simply snapped. So nasty, didn't want that. And RACP wise, of course, it's cracked. What else would you expect from a 318 automatic LPG? I mean, how they get to this state is just clear evidence that the RACP is a big problem point on an E46. Now, a little bit of info on this. It's an early build, so it's pre-February 2000. I'm 99% sure we were the first to break this info to the world years and years ago. We put some posts on an American forum that have been used and copied loads of times, which is fine. It's just good to get that knowledge out there. So pre-February 2000, they didn't have the two vertical spot welds there and there that we see on the post-February 2000 builds, so all of the M3s, for example. So that meant the internal threaded receiver was held with 3 MIG welds at the top internally, and some of them had some MIG welds at the back internally, round about there, on what we call the wings. But the ones that didn't have the spot welds on the front meant that that internal section, when the 3 MIG welds at the top start breaking, moves around, and that platform, which is about a rectangle shape all the way around there, just simply tries to break itself down underneath the torsional loading of the diff. But I just still want to reiterate and remind people, this is a 318i Touring automatic, so you couldn't even dump the clutch, couldn't even do real wheel spins or anything like that. And then somebody's put LPG on it 12 years ago, so that clearly shows the type of driver that was using this car. Nothing against the way they were driving it, but they were conservative, should we say, with their fuel. And that means they're not going to be hammering the accelerator pedal, are they? They're not going to be doing donuts and showing off to their friends. But yeah, they drove it really nice, sensibly, and yet it still cracked. So that's a clear evidence there why RACPs need some help in hand. And there's actually many generations of the RACP that we've found internally. Let's just go and get an internal threaded receiver and just show you some more. So a quick rundown with some props to show why this is cracked differently. This is normally where we'd see the crack on something like an E46 M3, anything that was built after February 2000, because it doesn't have those vertical spot welds. And if you're wondering why it's cracked across here, because not many people would have ever seen one crack across there, it was very early cars, 98, 99, 2000 model cars that used to crack like this. I've got a representation down here of all the different generations of the RACP internals. I don't think a video's ever been done about this, so I've done some highlights, drawings to show what the differences are. There's 4 differences on the RACPs over the years. The very first internal threaded receivers that were out in about 98, 99 were just completely circular and had 3 MIG welds at the very top and then 5 spot welds underneath to hold it together. They used to break quite spectacularly. I've seen cars without what we call the rear wings. So then later on, sometime, I don't know the exact date, but 98, 99, they introduced rear wings, which are these little pieces just here, which had MIG welds holding it on to the internal threaded receiver, holding it to the cavity cover panel part of the RACP. All this is completely hidden internally because we've done dissecting of these panels and so much work over the last 11 years. We get to know the intricate differences between them. Then February 2000 is when they added front wings, which are these little pieces up here. So then they changed the shape quite dramatically, widened it to stabilize it, and then they put 2 spot welds on in a vertical line, which normally go just about there and there. And then that helps quite a lot. That stopped them completely splitting and falling out straight through the underside, which is what this one's doing. And that's because this one that we see is this version here. And then later on, so then October 2004 built cars had then this version, but with an additional plastic brace. That's what it looks like. It's an internal bonded brace. I don't know if it's 3D printed, but it's an amazingly well molded system, which is an exact internal copy dimensionally of the cavity cover panel inside the RACP, and they bonded it together with this blue, so it changed the hollow section to a solid section. And that's because they just kept moving the problem. The early ones, they cracked straight through the middle, and then this threaded receiver dropped out through the bottom. These ones did exactly the same. Then once they added these front and rear wings, that stabilized things and it stopped them dropping through the bottom, but it caused cracks elsewhere. It moved the load energy further along, so it then used to make them crack next to the threaded receiver, which is just that area just there. That's the traditional cracks that we see. And then they thought, well, to improve that and stop that from happening, we'll just brace that area up and put a plastic bonded block inside, which genuinely does help. There hasn't been many times where we've seen October 2004 built vehicles that have had cracks on the left rear mounting point, but those stresses and energies are pushed elsewhere through the car, and then you find them crack on the right hand side of the vehicle, which has got no internal brakes. That was only for the left hand side. And it's worth noting as well that if the car has had a panel replacement, a BMW Goodwill or warranty replacement panel, and even if you buy the panel today ending in 246, it comes as this version, which is the latest generation, which comes with the left rear plastic block. So there we go, there's a rundown on all the different generations of the E46 RACP. There is one earlier version as well, which was only known as a repair panel. It got taken off the parts catalogue very early on, but it was basically, you used to be able to buy, instead of having to buy the entire RACP, which is the front line there, there's the rear line there, you used to be able to buy just the rear half of it, much like an E36 RACP where it was in two sections. The parts catalogue, it's still on there today. If you go on BMW Fans or Real OEM, you'll see the picture of it. You'll see a picture of an entire RACP, and then you'll also see a picture of a rear section of an RACP. That was a repair panel. It was never came out as a factory piece. BMW used to sell it, but they soon took it off the catalogue and only sell it as one piece. But simply, you would have to do an overlap joint, and they got rid of that idea really early on. So I haven't included it in the video because it wasn't ever a factory item. It was just a repair panel that never made it into the parts scheme. But there we go, that's the 4 different generations of E46 RACP internal design at the rear. So that's where we are. The end result is that the RACP is significantly cracked, far more than we thought. I mean, we were always going to be reinforcing it anyway with the Reedish V3 reinforcement plate kit, but just interesting to see that you go into one area expecting to do one type of job. That's the sort of way with E46s, whether it be corrosion, surprising corrosion that you find when there's holes in things like the seal. We'll do that in part 2. But when you come to do one job like the boot floor, which you think is going to be fairly straightforward, yeah, we'll work that out, and then you come across really interesting and significant hairline cracks, well, actually splits, aging, gaping holes in the RACP. So we'll be moving on to that as well. That's the end of part 1 for now, so please do subscribe. Feel free to share the video with anybody you think might be interested in seeing the Reedish Motorsport E46 M3 Touring evolve. Not sure how long it's going to take, but hopefully we're here to provide that sort of documentation to a good level. We're certainly going to enjoy the process, and we hope you are too.